Has this ever happened to you?
Dang it, I can never beat these bots. They're just too good.
Well, die no more, dear viewer, because with this video, you should be able to beat these bots no problem. Let's get started. On the surface, these bots are really good. I mean, check them out. They'll switch their protection prayers really quickly. They might DD under you. They'll generally one-tick most of their switches, including a 4-way switch to barrage. They have a spec bar plugin so they can one-tick a DDS from any weapon, and they're just really fast. All these attributes together should make an incredible PKer, and for the most part, these bots are really effective. But don't forget, they're bots. They're just computer code. So if you know how they work, you can definitely beat them. So of course, in order to beat these bots, you'll have to stay alive long enough to do so. The first thing to keep in mind is the basics of NHing. Ditterbitter has a great guide on how to start NHing, so definitely check that out if you're not too experienced. But I'll go over the most important aspects here. Unless you're performing an attack, you should keep your tank gear on as much as possible. This means stay in your D-hide and plate legs. Don't sit in robes. When casting freezes, put your robes on, cast barrage, and then switch back into your tank gear as soon as possible. Wield your staff and your spirit shield to increase your magic defense bonus. This will all help reduce the amount of damage you're taking while setting up methods to actually kill these bots. Your next priority with these bots is to freeze them, preferably away from yourself. Bots in general don't seem to prioritize any specific combat style, but these ones in particular do switch to their DDS a lot, even going so far as to fake magic by equipping their robes, then pulling out their DDS. So freezing them such that they can't melee you makes getting protection prayers right much easier. These bots make the decision to use a particular combat style upon reading your protection prayer, but then actually perform their attacks a few ticks later. This means you have some clearance to switch prayers to their next style before they perform it, but it's a small window. Take some time to just watch how they switch weapons and attack to get a sense of the timing. It should be easy to get your prayers right if you've frozen the bot away from yourself, but if you're next to it, I tend to pray range or magic, then before they attack, switch to pray melee. This should help mitigate most of the damage until you can get away from them. Now once you've frozen them and are standing away from them, you have two options. The first is switching between your range and your magic prayers between their attacks so that they read, for example, magic prayer, after which they decide to use ranged, then switching to your ranged prayer a tick before they attack. This should help you avoid most damage that they do. The other option is less effective, but if you're struggling with the timing, it's easier and still works well. All you have to do is camp pray range and sit in your highest magic defense bonus items at all times. This means your D-hide top, your robe bottoms, your staff, your shield or mage's book if you have one, and removing your barrow's helm if you have that as well. Now they should only attack you with magic, but they'll splash fairly often. So now you know how they attack and should be able to mitigate some of the damage. Now it's time to kill the bots. The most important thing to realize is that these bots only read your weapons. This means keep it simple. Switching into your robes as a fakie or DDing means nothing to them. They only pray based on your weapon. Avoid unnecessary clicks and switches to better focus on getting your prayers right. This also means that camping your staff and switching into robes won't catch them off guard. They'll be praying magic because your staff is equipped. Knowing this, you have two options for hitting the bots off prayer. First, you can use the wrong weapon for attacks. You can staff bash them and they'll never pray melee. This isn't recommended unless done with the Staff of the Dead, as that's actually a viable melee weapon, whereas the other staffs are pretty awful and slow. This is a good tactic, but do be careful because they can still use melee against you. Fortunately, because you'll never have to switch your weapons, you can just stay on your prayer tab and switch between protection prayers as they switch their weapons. Similarly, you can mage them with your whip or your crossbow equipped. This is good, but do be careful that they're not hitting you on robes too much as you're doing this. Freeze them and blood barrage them to stay alive with the wrong weapon equipped. Make sure you're switching back into your tank gear as soon as you're done with your mage attack. The second option is to one-tick your weapons. This is definitely the best thing to do against the bots and NHing in general, so why not practice for real people while fighting the bots? Camp in your full tank gear, staff and all. They'll be praying magic against your staff, so you're free to one-tick your crossbow once they've changed to magic prayers. Then immediately switch back into your staff. You can do the same thing with camping your staff into doing a one-tick melee hit. The bots switch prayers 1 to 2 ticks after they see the weapon, so you'll need to be quick in order to do this. If you're not very experienced at PKing, one-ticking means pulling out your weapon and hitting them with it instantly. You have to wait until the attack cycle from your previous attack has been completed before pulling out your weapon for the next attack. You can practice by waiting longer than you should to be able to hit next, then clicking your crossbow for example, and immediately clicking on them. This should help you get the timing right, and you should eventually be able to get it onto a perfect 5-tick cycle. These are really the only ways of consistently hitting these bots off prayer. You don't have to be fancy, just consistent, because now you know how basic their prayer switching really is. So, now you know all these tactics. Here's a recap to put it all together. First, freeze them away from where you're standing, whether they're praying magic or not. Stay far away from them to have time to switch to pray melee once they're unfrozen. If you're frozen next to each other, remember that they usually switch to DDS, so upon praying the correct prayer for their weapon, switching to melee is often the next thing to do. Use melee when next to them as it's higher DPS. Get into the cycle of having them hit you, letting them read your protection prayer, then switching your prayer a tick or two before their next attack. Either one-tick your weapons or attack with the wrong weapon. Refreeze them as soon as possible and repeat. In addition to all this, here's one more tactic that'll likely be fixed in the future, but for the time being, it's a nearly foolproof way of killing these bots every single time. When they're frozen, these bots will try to attack you with melee only if you're within 1 square of them. If you're further away, they'll use magic or ranged. However, the bots consider all tiles surrounding them as within 1 square, even diagonal tiles, and this is what you can exploit to beat these bots every single time you fight them. Freeze them and then walk to a tile that's diagonal to the tile that they're frozen on. Pray ranged. They may cast a barrage on you once, but continue praying ranged. After this, they'll switch into their DDS and try to attack you, but they won't be able to hit you. Do not pray melee while they're frozen, as this will cause them to use a different attack style. Only do so when they're about to be unfrozen. Now you're free to hit them with your one-tick attacks or using the wrong weapon with no damage coming onto you. And that should be it. By following these steps, you should be able to beat these bots consistently, even if you have almost no idea what you're doing when it comes to NHing. I should have another more normal PKing video coming out in the next week or two, but for now, go get some free points. Thanks for watching.